All right, welcome everyone to this class on Noahide laws. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this class on Noahide laws, holding by the laws of idolatry, and this is part 3, and we're calling it idolatry. Indeed, so a lot of different aspects over here. Prohibition of benefits, elements of idolatry, different things, different objects of idolatry. I'm going to speak a lot about this as we go along. So we spoke before about the fundamentals, some of the fundamental ideas, in thought and belief, and how you're not liable, at least punishment in this world, for these type of idolatries. But if you do the acts, and we're going to see what that is, much more severe. Right, as I said, either you bow to it, or you sacrifice to it, or wine libation, or different things. Right, that's much more severe. Now we're going to examine, and we're going to look at practical laws over here. So usually there are 4 factors. There are 4 factors involved over here. That is, one is the object of idolatry, i.e. the object itself, the idol itself. The method of worshiping the idol, whether you're bowing or sacrificing to it. Utensils of worship, anything used in conjunction with idolatry. In other words, the thing itself, right? The thing itself, meaning the object, right? What's going to be with the object? Is the object, going to be forbidden? And that was the 3rd thing. 4th thing is the worshiping yourself, right? That's also going to be an issue. So, in order to be guilty, over here, there are a lot of ramifications. Let's say a person used the object, but let's say not in all cases, the object becomes prohibited. We're going to see what that means. Worshipping it, there's a transgression maybe deserving of death or punishment by being spiritually cut off, the hands of heaven. The utensils of worship, they are prohibited when they are decorations. Going to be used as decorations, let's say offering, to the idol. 4th thing is the worshiper. The one who actually worships is going to be a unbelievable transgression over here, either subject to the punishment at the hands of heaven, or liable to the death penalty, right, in this world. Also, gives a person the halachic authority of an idolater, which affects how Jews in Noahides are going to interact with him. Right, that we'll see another time. But also, those ramifications. Now, when we talk about getting any benefit, what do we mean the object of idolatry is forbidden? It means you can't derive any benefit from such an item. Right, the Code of Jewish Law tells us, Yeridea 146, Halacha 14. Rambam, also commentary to idolatry, to Avodah Zarah, 59b. So it means this thing must be destroyed or nullified. Now, nullification, we'll see. Nullification, we'll see what it means. All right, we'll see what it means over here. But once the item itself is nullified, then I can derive benefit from it. So we're going to have to see how that works. Now, what's the object? What's an object of idolatry? It could be something that's representational or natural. So let's say a man-made statue or an image that represents a deity, or people believe it's the actual deity, or it's an intermediary between man and a deity, or it embodies some aspect of the deity. That's going to be forbidden. So not only you're not allowed to worship it, you're not allowed to make or own any 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional representation of anything for the purpose of worship or to represent God or a god. In other words, you're not allowed to make something in more than one dimension. For what purpose? To worship. Not only that, you might say, oh, worshiping it is the problem. No, not just worshiping, owning it. You're not allowed to own it. Right? The Torah says you're not allowed to bring an abomination in your house. It means an idol. You're not allowed to have it. Now, there is going to be a difference if the idol is made by Jews or non-Jews. If it's made by a non-Jew for the sake of idolatry, 100% they made it for idolatry, then it's forbidden. It's prohibited as an item for idolatry. If it's made by a Jew, if a Jew made it, it only becomes forbidden when it's worshipped. If it's not worshipped, doesn't necessarily mean it's forbidden, right? Why not? It's never been used. Once it's been used, that's a different issue. Rambam says the laws of idolatry, chapter 7, halacha 5. What about natural idols? Now, natural idol means not man-made, right? 100%, right? 100%. It's not man-made over here. So if it's not man-made, what's the din? What is the law over here? It means things that are created by God, i.e. trees, rocks, animals, streams, rivers, mountains, etc. So if a non-Jew worships them, doesn't necessarily mean it's forbidden. Why? Because how can a non-Jew forbid something that I want to, how can he, he worships a mountain. I can't go in the mountain now because he worships the mountain. Right? Why should that be forbidden for me? The natural idols in their naturally occurring condition, which means if it's in its original condition, it's not altered in any way for the sake of idolatry, does not become prohibited. Right? Even if it's worshipped. Right? This is the Rambam, Laws of Idolatry, chapter 8. Because then you wouldn't be able to use anything. Right? You want to climb this mountain. You want to use this rock. Whatever, this natural thing, whatever it is. And they bow down to it. So they bow down to it. It means it's going to be forbidden. Why does it have to be forbidden? So the rocks and stones of an idolatrous mountain are permitted. Why? Because again, they can't forbid that. Waters from idolatrous wells or rivers, also permitted, as well as animals. So too, fruits of a tree that are worshipped as an idol. They worship this tree. Why can't I get benefit from the tree? Right? It's also permitted. If anything offered to such an idol remains permitted over here. But any adornments, now there's going to be one difference here. Any adornments that are used to honor, beautify the idol, that's going to be forbidden. That you don't know how to get benefit from. But that they're using to beautify the idol. Now, what about a natural idol that's altered for the sake of idolatry? From their natural occurring conditions. Which means, let's say this thing got changed. It got altered for the sake of idolatry. Now, is that going to be forbidden? It'll be forbidden like any item fashioned as an idol. Therefore, it's going to be prohibited for anything offered to the idol. Meaning, what's the example here? If a stone is rolled to a new location, let's say a certain formation, whatever it is, now you take it, you put it in a new location for the sake of idolatry. Then it becomes forbidden. Then it's going to be forbidden. And anything offered to it becomes prohibited. Why? Because it's moved from its original state. It's not part of what it was before. But if the stone was worshipped in its original natural occurring position, then neither it nor anything offered becomes prohibited. Again, because that's the natural position. Right? That's the natural condition that it was. So if it wasn't moved, be permitted. A non-Jew cannot forbid that. He cannot forbid something in its natural habitat. Let's say. Another example, a tree. Tree in its natural condition does not become prohibited for idolatry, even if it's worshipped. But if it was planted for the sake of idolatry, or if it's in any way altered for the sake of idolatry, then it's forbidden, and anything offered to it. So, if it's just a tree, people bow to it, it's not forbidden. Fruit of it would not be forbidden. If it was planted for idolatry, different issue. That would be forbidden, anything part of it be forbidden. What about decorative figures? It's also forbidden to make any three-dimensional representation of, let's say, humanoid or angelic figures. For what purpose? For decoration. This includes making sculptures of angels, demons, mythical humanoid creatures, satyrs, mermaids, these type of things. Now, if they're not used for, let's say it's not used for decoration, then they're allowed to be made. All right, that wouldn't be an issue. So therefore, mannequins, medical models, let's say CPR dummies, may be constructed. They're not used for that, right? That's not what the purpose is. So it's permissible. Whether it's permitted for Noahides to own a prohibited item, that's going to be a whole discussion. Something that is forbidden, when it says you're not allowed to bring an abomination into your house, does that apply to a Noahide or not? All right, that's unclear. All right, there's a whole discussion over here. The Torah, the son of the Rosh, the Ramah, Ramosh Isulis, the Shach, the Yerodea, 141, Halacha 4, they all agree, no Torah prohibition for a Noahide. Comes on the Marami Rutenberg, the Rebbe of the Rosh, or Beit Washer, the Ramban, the Rif, Marit, they disagree. And they hold it's a biblical prohibition. Nonetheless, Jews are not allowed to own such items. It's a rabbinic injunction. Now, Noahides don't have this injunction. So there's a whole array of opinions over here. So therefore, many holds, Noahides, nonetheless, shouldn't own them. Now you say, come on, it's difference of opinion, yeah, but there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of discussion over here where they should or not. Right? So therefore, it's better that they shouldn't own them. If a person wants to keep such an item, let's say you don't want to get rid of it. You want to keep it for decoration. So you have to nullify it, you have to alter it in a way to make it imperfect. For example, if an item's a sculpture, if they have a hand, then just take off a finger, remove a finger. If a face, then the nose should be cut off. Or maybe the ear or something. All right, nullification will be discussed. We're going to go through it, as we go here. But you got to do something to show it's not served in the same way. Meaning that the thing itself is not the same. Right, you cut off a finger, you cut off a nose. Something like that. Can a person make a two-dimensional representation of other humanoid or angelic forms? You're allowed to. 3-dimension be a problem. Single dimension be a problem. Now, there's an issue with the idol itself, but there are other things. What about an item that's offered to an idol? There are 3 categories. One is a man-made idol. So that thing offered is prohibited. You don't know how to get benefit from it. Items offered, let's say, to an unaltered natural idol. Right? My mountain, let's say. The rocks do not become prohibited. What about items offered to natural idols, been altered for the sake of idolatry, prohibited from benefit? Why? Because it was made for that. Once something's made for idolatry, it becomes forbidden. Anything offered to it becomes forbidden. Vessels of service. Goblets, bowls, other containers used in serving the idol. Again, it's an aspect of idolatry because it's being used. 100% is being used for for idolatry, right? That'd be an issue. Why? It's been used. 100% it's been used. So therefore it's forbidden. What about decorations? Decorations for the idol. Any item made for the decoration or enhancement of the idol, prohibited for benefit. But again, it's used to enhance. So therefore it's forbidden. Now, it doesn't mean it's attached to it or in contact with it. But again, it could include other things. Candles, rugs, incense. Meaning incense burned, let's say, to enhance the environment. Incense not used as an offering. Still be forbidden. Why? Because you're enhancing the whole thing. Flowers, other items, even if they're natural, also going to be forbidden. You shouldn't smell them or otherwise use them. What about buildings used for the idol? If any house or building constructed for the purpose of idolatrous worship, right, it's prohibited for benefit. So, what would I say? Churches, right? These places have to be nullified or destroyed. Now, even outside of Israel, we should do that, but if you do that, probably go to jail, right? Or, worse. So, you can't do it, but that's how strict it is over here. You should destroy it or nullify it. So churches have the status of a house of idolatry. That we clarified. Even if the whole question about shituf doesn't really matter. The fact is that we hold it's idolatry. So a Noahide should not enter or admire such places. Right? Family events held in churches. Can't go. Right? You can't go. Right? And if, let's say, it would cause strife, cause a lot of problems, maybe it's okay. But you got to be very careful. Because even if you go, you can't participate in any religious aspect of the service, nor admire or benefit anything within the church. So you can enter a church, let's say for any practical purpose, let's say, you had to work there or something. But a mosque, for any reason, not a problem. Why? It's not idolatry. We hold it's not idolatrous. There is an opinion that it is. We don't hold that way. Right? Essentially, we don't hold that way. So, yeah, I guess the push comes to shove. You have to go to a church. It's going to cause a lot of family problems. As long as you're not participating in it, maybe it's okay. I think most people probably wouldn't want to do it anyway, regardless. But, could be. Could be over here. What about music? What about music of idolatry? So, you don't have the benefit from the music of idolatry. There's not a practical purpose for doing so. Right? In other words, Gregorian chants, these type of things. Church music, you ain't get benefit from it. You want to listen to it because it calms your nerves. No, not allowed to. Now, what about worshiping the idol itself? So all forms of idol worship forbidden. If it's actually worshiping, which we're going to see. But you only incur death penalty if you worship the idols in one of the following ways. You do it in a way that is specific to the idol. In other words, if one worships an idol in a way that's established for that idol, how do they worship it? They bow down to it. Right? You transgress, and the idol and the items involved become prohibited. In other words, you serve it the way people serve it. You worship it, whatever the case is. Using an action reserved for HaShem in the temple. Certain methods of worship are specific to the worship of God. So if one uses any of these methods to worship an idol, even if the method is, let's say, it's not particular to that idol. In other words, you don't serve the idol necessarily that way. Nonetheless, you transgress. You render the idol and all items involved are prohibited. So there are four things. There are four ways of worshiping an idol according to what went on during the temple, when the temple exists in Jerusalem. One of them we mentioned, bowing. Capital punishment: if you bow to an idol, bring his face to the ground. That is going to be forbidden. That's death penalty. Even if bowing is not the normal method of worship for this idol, still going to be forbidden. But if bowing even less than this amount is customary for that idol, right, you also incur liability. So let's say you don't get on your hands and knees, right, or you don't get on your knees and bow over. Let's say you bow a little bit. That's enough. That would be enough. If you bow as a sign of respect, but you have no intent of recognizing the idol as a god, still forbidden. Because bowing itself is an act of submission and acceptance. Doesn't matter. Right? Totally doesn't matter here. You're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. Even if you're just showing it respect. You're not allowed to show respect. Doesn't matter if you don't worship it. You can say, oh, wow, it's a big novelty. How are you allowed to accept it? Even if it's not a god. Right? That should be forbidden. But if the bowing is no way intended to be a sign of respect, but you're bowing for some other reason, fear of persecution or death, you're not liable. You're also allowed to bow down to avoid danger. You're not serving it that way. That's not your intention. Something's coming over and you bend down because you don't want to get hit. Right? So that's okay. Right? No intended purpose here. Right? You have no way are you intending to worship it. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you're not allowed to slaughter an animal. That is, you're incising the animal's neck, either its front or its back, or chopping the neck with a sword or an axe. That animal, again, species is going to be irrelevant. Doesn't matter, kosher animal, not kosher animal. Going to be forbidden. So here, there's a difference of opinion whether the act of slaughter is forbidden or the object of slaughter. Right? In other words, where the transgression is going to lie over here. Right? Because therefore, even if a person slaughtered a locust to an idol, now a locust is not fit to be offered in the temple. Doesn't matter. Still forbidden. According to that, it'd still be forbidden. So no question. There's no question over here. But it doesn't matter what species. Totally doesn't matter. A burnt offering, burning anything for the sake of the idol is forbidden. Right? Even including anything not burnt on the altar in the temple. The act of burning, right? That's the issue. Not what is being burnt or offered. In other words, you burn something, that's enough. That's enough because that's what they did. And the fourth thing over here is a libation. If you throw or pour water or pour wine, let's say, for the sake of an idol, of any substance that can splash or splatter. Any substance that can splash or splatter will be forbidden, including oil, blood, water, etc. Even materials such as honey and fruit juice, not offered on the altar in the temple. Anything that can splatter, right, that would be forbidden. Not including solid material or hard substances like clay. Now, a lot of rabbinic authorities, including the Shulchan Aruch over here, do not agree with the Rambam over here, on this point. That even clay or anything hard also applies, right? The difference of opinion over here. What about if you place something before the idol? So if I place something before an idol, does that mean it's an idolater's worship over here? If it's the normal way you serve the idol, yeah, then it would be forbidden. But if you place, you involve the idol resembles those offered in the temple, everything's forbidden, right? In all cases. In other words, if it's done similar to what was done in the temple, yeah, that's going to be forbidden. Right? Now, what does that mean? What is that including? The meat or any species of sacrificed animals, such as sheep, cows, goats, right? Placed before the idol. Whole doves, wine, bread, oil, salt, water, blood, wheat, or grapes also apply. Because that's the normal way. That's how it's served. So these things would be forbidden. Now, we spoke before this idea of nullification. How does nullification work? Once you have an idol, God forbid. There's this idol. What do you do with it? What are you allowed to do with it? It's prohibited. Can't get benefit from it. You can't own it. Can't use it for any purpose. Now, the difference is who made it. If it's the idol of a Jew, right? An idol made prohibited by a Jew, never nullified. If a Jew made the idol, no matter what you do, it's never nullified. You got to destroy it. That's it. The only thing you do is demolish it. What about the idol of a non-Jew? Now, a non-Jewish idol can be mavatal, can be nullified over here. And then I can use it. I can use it. I can benefit from it. And how do you nullify it? You mar it in a conspicuous way with the intent of removing its status as an idol. For example, if the idol is a human face, cut the nose off, cut the ear off, I don't know, pluck the eyebrows off, bash its head in. Do something to nullify it. If it's a hand, take a finger off. Now, any non-Jew over here can nullify the idol of any non-Jew. But a Jew cannot nullify anyone's idol. It has to be done by a non-Jew. Right? It has to be done by a non-Jew over here. So a Jew can't do it. Now, there is one other issue. And that is, let's say nullified. Let's say the non-Jew nullifies it. Punches it in the face, takes off its nose, whatever it is. So my question would be, according to this, we're saying you could keep it. You could use it. My question would be, why? Why would you want it? Why in the world do you want it over here? So I don't know. You want to use it for something, whatever. Whatever it is. You like it standing there. But it's got no nose. Got no lips. I don't know. What's the reason it's okay? The reason it's okay is because it's not in its full form here. You knocked its ear off. You knocked its nose off. Whatever it is. So therefore, it's like it's not worship now. And if it's like it's not worship, I can use it. My question is, would you want to use it? So some people say, what's the problem? Totally nullified. I like it. I like it hanging on my wall. We call it pop art. We'll put it on my wall. Okay? Right? Is there a problem? It's been nullified. Right? I'm asking a philosophical question. Even if it's nullified, should you have it? Again, on the one side, not a problem. Right? Not a problem. Totally nullified. Right? Totally nullified. I could use it. Question is, would you want to? Now, last thing over here is secondary services and practices. The Gemara in Sanhedrin 56b says, Noahide the word warned against numerous forms of divination, sorcery, necromancy. Now, a lot of the examples in the Torah are no longer practiced. You look at Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 9 to 12. There are a number of things not practiced. Right? Nonetheless, types of divination mentioned remain prohibited. The Rambam doesn't mention these prohibitions when he talks about the Noahide laws. But he mentions them in other places. You can say, the Rambam doesn't say it, so it's probably permissible. No, but he mentions other places. He mentions it in the laws of idolatry, chapter 6, chapter 11, halacha 6. The explanation on the Mishnah and Avodah Zarah on chapter 4, Mishnah 7. He mentioned many other places, so even though he doesn't mention it, interesting by the Noahide laws, he mentions it elsewhere. So nonetheless, they still become forbidden over here. Now, these acts, we're not going to say it's idolatry. It's not really idolatry, but it's a secondary practice. Now, they don't get the death penalty. If they do, it's still forbidden. So what's forbidden over here? Any form of fortune telling, such as, tarot cards, scrying, whatever it is, interpreting events and sights as omens for the future. It includes casting lots or dice, interpreting the results as a sign of the future. Say, if I get double sixes, it means I shouldn't go out tonight. Something like that. Person should not select a sign for himself, saying, if such a thing happens, then I'm going to do such and such. Right? If there's a full moon, then I'll do whatever. That's forbidden, even if there's no logical connection, right? You can say, what's the connection? Right? What's the connection over here between the sign and the person's action? Doesn't matter. You're giving something credibility which it doesn't have. You can say, oh, if this happens, I'll do this. Markesha. Right? What's the connection? Oh, it doesn't matter. Still forbidden. It is permitted to look back and appreciate the connection between past events. Connect the dots. I always bring cases up like this. Connecting the dots and say, oh, that was good for me. Everything got bad, went better after this whole thing. Okay? That's not forbidden. You're looking back. You're not saying, oh, because this happened, that happened, whatever. Person may not practice incantations, meaningless words believed to have magical effects. But what about real incantations? Are in Derech HaShem, in the way of God, to tap into the dark side, so to speak, it's easy. You don't need to be on a high spiritual level, nothing. As long as you know what you're saying, you know what you're doing, you can do these things. Person could tap in. We shouldn't, 100% we shouldn't, but you don't have to be on a high spiritual level to do it. So therefore, even meaningless incantations that don't have any power, you shouldn't do. Not only that, should not try and command supernatural, spiritual forces. No Ouija boards, no trying to control angels, different things. Bringing up souls, also for all these things. Right? For your own needs, be forbidden. Contacting the dead, forbidden. Right? Even for non-Jews, all these things, forbidden for Noahides. Astrology, though, interesting, is permitted for Noahides. Maybe foolish, but not necessarily prohibited. For Jews, it's prohibited. Now, what about horoscopes? Astrology is not horoscopes. Horoscopes don't mean anything, right? Even for Jews. Even for Jews. All these things forbidden for Jews as well, right? Astrology is something else. Someone who knows how to look at the stars. So, if they know how to look at the stars, doesn't matter. We're going to say it's okay, right? Even it might be foolish or whatever, but there's a novelty over here. One of the things is even practicing something has no power, doesn't do anything. Still not allowed to because of all these other things, right? It comes under the category of sorcery. Sorcery, not necessarily idolatry, as we mentioned, it's an offshoot. Right? Total offshoot, even if the things in Torah are not practiced, doesn't matter. These other things, again, Ouija boards, bringing up spirits, bringing up souls, contacting the dead, all these things totally forbidden, right? Totally forbidden for Noahides, as well, except for, astrology. What do you call it? Horoscopes, yeah, horoscopes shouldn't be an issue, right? Because that's, if a person would say, oh, I'm going to listen to it, it's got power, okay, right? But if you're just reading it, for fun, that wouldn't be a problem. That's really nothing. But if you give it power that doesn't have, yeah, that would definitely be an issue. So any questions on any of that? Anything about sorcery, secondary services, nullification, modes of worship, and objects of idolatry, idols, or benefit, getting benefit. Any questions? Any questions on any of that? Anyone have any general questions? All right, go ahead. If you have trouble writing it, just unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rabbi.
He's free.
I was trying so hard to type fast enough.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Go ahead.
So I was thinking about all of the natural disasters with the super cyclone in the northern United States. There were others too, but especially with the super cyclone, how it covered the whole northern U.S. And I was thinking, isn't that isn't it possible that that's like a judgment for water? Because we got done with we got done with Sukkot, and
Right.
Sukkot is judgment for water. So I was wondering if that might be a possibility, especially with all of the moral decline that we have right now.
I mean, what for what?
I mean, is it possible that all of this is probably for what? For oh gosh, kind of what we were talking about last week, but for all of the LGBT
Lack of water? You mean think lack of water? That's what you're talking about, or
no, too much water, natural
too much
disaster.
water.
Yeah.
No, so natural disasters, quote unquote. You know, the Rambam says there's an equilibrium. There's a scale. You know, there's a scale in every place, every country, every city. There's a scale of good and bad, right? The sides of good and bad. So if the scale goes too far on the side of bad, and people don't repent or whatever, what's God going to do? He can demolish the place. He can make a fire, right? Destroy some of LA, you know, whatever, make a huge wildfire, you know, take thousands of people out of their homes. He can make a tsunami, right? Put Atlas back on the map, no pun intended. Totally demolish half of Southeast Asia. That's a decree, you know, or make a hurricane, let's say. You know, make a hurricane, you know, destroy New Orleans. You know, destroy these type of places. You have an earthquake. You have an earthquake, same thing. So all these things are judgment, 100% judgment. When they happen, you know, we don't know. We don't know what's going on in God's mind, when he's going to bring something, when he's not going to bring something, right? But I would, you know, I'll give an example. A number of years ago, when they had one of these gay parades here in Israel, shortly thereafter, there was a shooting in a gay bar in Miami. Very shortly thereafter, it wasn't like the next day. It was like maybe a week later, a few weeks later, you know, something like that. Now, someone's going to say, oh, wow, that's a very interesting coincidence. Guy went into a gay bar and started shooting the place. He could have gone anywhere. What, there are not enough bars in Miami to go shooting up? Why did he pick a gay bar? You know why I picked a gay bar? Because I don't like gays. Right? Simple, that's what I would say simply. Right? He's homophobic, whatever it is. He doesn't like gays, but guess what? Something happens here in a negative way. It could have negative repercussions here. It could have negative repercussions elsewhere. But each place, if let's say the big earthquake in San Francisco years ago, right? And that's where the epicenter was. Now, is that shocking that you have an epicenter in the place where, you have a huge gay population? It's not a coincidence. Judgment. Things there's a whole shooting, a few years ago, and a whole thing in Las Vegas, in Sin City. You think that happened by accident? That happened by accident. Places like that, there's greater judgment. 100%. Right? So if there's too much water or a lack of water, we're going through something now where, we're in January. We got November. We need rain here. We need rain. A lot of things made out of limestone, things, water dissipates very quickly. So the Kinneret, Sea of Galilee, always needs to be filled or it has to be high. A lot of times we don't get enough rain, right? So they keep making like red lines, okay, until they get to a certain point where they won't pump out water from it. So remember, a number of years there was no rain. I mean, it's good for us if you like the weather, but it wasn't so cold and but there was no rain. So they kept drawing the line lower, lower, lower. So they almost got to the point they couldn't draw water out anymore. It's gonna be dangerous. Right? One year, it was like it rains, we'll put it in perspective. Unless you know the metrics. The water was so low, it needed like 3.5 meters. I think like 3.5 meters of water just to get, to get to the maximum level. It's a lot of rain, a huge amount of rain. So for a number of years, it was, we got wimpy rain, We didn't get very much rain at all, etc. And the rain has fallen in the right place also, but okay. So we didn't get very much rain. 1 year, I mean, it was unbelievable. It just rained like you can't imagine. For days. Doesn't normally rain for days. I mean, it can. You can get enough rain in a month in like 1 day here, if it rains enough. So last week we got good rain, right? 1 day could have been for the whole month, right? But we haven't got a lot of rain. So right after Sukkot is a judgment of rain. If we don't get rain here, right, that's not a good sign. But the last couple of years, thank God we got a lot of rain. And when you get a lot of rain here, you stay wet. That's just the bottom line. You never really warm up. It's just, you're just constantly wet. But okay, that's the blessing. I always tell people you have to learn how to walk between the drops. They're like, that's why you're soaking wet. I'm like, right. But yeah, that's a decree. Too much rain is bad. Had that also. We got so much rain, that they had to, open up the Sea of Galilee a little bit. Yeah, sometimes it got really cold and livestock died, chickens died. Okay. Rain is good and excess is bad. And it has to hit in the right places. So even if you get a lot of rain in one place, but it's not the main place, that's also a problem. Right? So these quote unquote natural disasters, so to speak, that's God's wrath over here. Now you're going to say, come on, women, children, people losing their houses, this, that. Nobody's innocent. Let's make that clear. Nobody is innocent. Even if this person, does good things and this and that, it could be their soul has to get punished. Who knows? And, I've heard said many times, people say, oh, this person's a nice person. Yeah, they could be. A lot of nice, quote unquote, nice people out there. But are they nice in their service to God? And if the answer is no, then what do I care how nice they are? Nice doesn't mean anything. What means something is how you act towards others. What means something is how you act towards God, what you do, or God forbid what you don't do. The payback. No, there's measure for measure. We don't understand the measure for measure many times. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're limited in what we see. I think if God would open our eyes a drop, we'd be scared out of our wits what we see and how things work. We don't fathom it. We don't understand. Totally don't understand. So, that's what I would say about that. It's payback, right? It's total payback. Where they get more, where they get less. And if you don't get any rain, and there are wildfires, it's also judgment. It's also total judgment. Lack of rain, too much rain, fires out of control. And I say, oh, it's global warming. It's this. No. God's orchestrating what he wants to do. And that's it. Right? So he's the one in control of these forces. Right? As Ramchal says in Derech HaShem. He's in control of these forces. These forces don't have independent power. People make the mistake, and they'll say, oh, the wind did this, the fire did that, other things, and tsunamis. No, God's in charge of it, right? That's why it's hard for a lot of people because if you say that, you say, oh, God is cruel, God is mean. No, God judges. Each place has judgment on it. If things are going good, things will be, good in that place. If not, not. There's judgment. People don't want to hear that. People want to think that, oh, it's just all random. Well, that's worse. That's worse because then you have no rhyme or reason for anything happening. You're bad luck. You just were at the wrong place at the wrong time. No, they don't believe that. The Gemara does say, if the angel of death is running wild, you don't want to be around. You can get caught up in it for different reasons, and the whole question is why. The angel of death is going crazy, taking people left and right, and you happen to be there. You can say, wrong person, wrong time. Right? Kind of like that movie, Ray. Remember, Heaven Can Wait? Right? Warren Beatty got killed before his time. Right? And then came back like reincarnated someone else. Went in someone else's body. Right? If you remember that. So, we don't believe that. Right? So that Gemara has to be understood. It has to be understood why a person would be taken if they're, they're not a fault over here. It's just the angel's going crazy, the angel of death. Right? He's running wild. You don't want to be in the wrong place. Well, why? But if you have mitzvahs to guard yourself against it, that shouldn't happen. So yeah, it's complicated. Right? That's very complicated. But in general, that's judgment. Earthquakes, judgment. Tsunamis, a judgment. No question. That tsunami happened. Knocked off half of Southeast Asia. Why did God want to knock it off? What would I say? I would say they're probably steeped in idolatry. And God says, okay, I've had enough. That's why a lot of these typhoons and all these things that happen in that part of the world. Right? A great rabbi once explained to me that's the reason. Because there's so much idolatry and God hates idolatry. But that doesn't mean, you don't have these things in in the States, and it may not have to do with idolatry. It could have to do with immorality, and other things. Right? But there are certain things that God can't stand. Immorality is one of them, idolatry is another. So if there's too much or whatever, at some point God's going to say, okay, that's it. Everyone out of the pool, right? I'm going to nail him. Right? Now, how does God make that judgment and when? That's his choice. But make no mistake, it's judgment. It's one of the things the Christians have a lot of difficulty with. I spoke about this last week. One of the different misconceptions, contradictions in the New Testament. One of them was about Satan, right? Mr. S, as we'll call him, because they got a problem with Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. It says God created evil. For them, they have a major problem. Major problem. Because where does evil come from? Fallen angel. We don't believe in fallen angels, right? Spoke about that a lot in Derech HaShem. Right? There are no fallen angels, no such thing, right? But they mistranslate the verse. Why? Because it doesn't fit their agenda. Torah doesn't fit their agenda, right? So, you have something like that, okay, right? So what's their problem then? You're gonna say, well, God is evil. God created evil. Why did he create evil? First of all, God's not evil, but why did he create it? To give man free choice. That's why he created evil. He gave us the opportunity to tap in or not. We're going to say we shouldn't tap in. True? 100% we shouldn't tap in. And if a person does, they're liable. That's their evil inclination. I mean, God is evil, but he wants people to have fair choice. Right? Either to choose good or not. That's what he wants. So, yeah, that's the short answer. But it's not a popular thing to say because they're going to say, but they're innocent children. Families lose their home. They become poverty-stricken. Different things. Okay, true. So we look at it as being tragic. I'm not saying it's not. Necessarily. Not necessarily. But the issue is that they're not guiltless. Even if they're young or whatever, and you say, oh, they're not liable. Whatever their soul has to go through, then they're liable. Right? They're not being punished if they're underage. So it's their soul that has to go through it. So nobody's innocent over here. It's just how it happens. Person, God forbid, killed in a car accident. Right? It's tragic. But that doesn't mean the person's not liable over here. Doesn't matter how it happened. Someone hit them, they went off the road, they fell asleep. Whatever it is, you gotta say, oh, that's tragic, this, that. You're right. The way we see it, it's tragic. So why did God take them? Could be 100 different reasons. Why that way? Again, if I were playing God, I put on my funny glasses, my funny mustache, have a great time over here telling you why things are happening. We don't know. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But make no mistake, nobody's innocent. And even if a person suffers, when they're not liable, it's because that's what their soul has to go through. Their soul has to get fixed up. That's the point. Right? It has nothing to do with their own liability. Because they're not liable at this point. They're young. Right? By Yishmael. That was the whole thing. Angels is telling God, kill him. Right? So God says, he's guilty. The child is not guilty. So God says, I can't kill him. You hit somebody where they're holding now. He's a child. Right? So he's not guilty. So, God forbid, child's born, with a disease or mentally challenged. Not the child's fault. It's not punishment. It's punishment for the soul, not punishment for the parents. Parents didn't do anything wrong. It's the soul that has to be fixed up being in this messed up body. Right? That's how it works. Yeah. Any other questions? Come on, Dimitri. I don't believe you're done. You got something else. Come on. This is your chance. Just kidding. All right. I guess if there are no other questions, then I guess next week is more about. I guess we'll finish up. I think with idolatry next week, another week or so. Otherwise, let's see. Anything comes in here before I open my mouth? Oh, nope. Yeah. So I guess if no other questions, then I'm going to sign out. Anyone has any questions, feel free. You can send me an email. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. Wish everyone a good middle of the day, almost end of the day for me, and everyone have a great rest of the week.